Today's story is considered one of the first miracles of the restoration of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It proves that God still heals today. If you're someone who loves real stories of courage, miracles, and quiet, unwavering faith, you're in the right place because that's all I do here. I share powerful, true stories that remind us that God is still in the details of our lives. If that sounds interesting to you, please subscribe and randomly send the like button a bouquet of flowers for no reason other than to tell them that you appreciate them. And if you have a story that you would like to have featured on our channel of a modern miracle or a tender mercy, please fill out the form in the comments below, and we'd love to feature it on our channel. All right, let's get into today's story. In the autumn of 1826, Joseph Knight Sr. stood outside his open doorway and listened as he heard the sounds of a wagon wheel approaching his property and coming up to his door. He saw the wagon and he saw a young man driving it, and when the wagon reached the door, he heard the young man stop his horses with a whoa. Then he jumped off the wagon, strode up to Joseph Knight Sr. and shook his hand, introducing himself as Joseph Smith. Joseph Smith had come to the Knight home and farm to work for them, to have employment at a time when he needed it. Joseph Knight Sr. was well known in the community as a prosperous individual, a wealthy individual, someone that had made good success here in the town where they lived, and he was a owner of a grist mill. If you're not familiar with a grist mill, it's a big building where grains are brought, corn, flour, or wheat is brought and ground down into wheat being ground into flour and corn being ground into cornmeal. And other grains as well were brought. And then they would be bagged up and distributed to the stores that sell them or to individuals to use them in baking and making goods. So Joseph Knight Sr. was an owner of a grist mill. He also had a farm. Joseph Smith was going to be working on the farm for him. While working there, he lived at the home and he would often attend dinners with the family. He eventually grew to trust the family enough to share their spiritual experiences that he was having with them. Experiences such as when he found the golden plates and saw them for the first time. Experiences such as when he was tutored by Moroni in the visions that he had, or the times that Moroni would visit him and other angels that would visit him and teach him the things that God needed him to know to restore the church. And the Knight family loved these stories. They would gather around Joseph and listen as he told them stories that made them feel like they were there with him. And they could really tell that Joseph knew these people on an individual basis who were visiting him. So they began to believe and trust Joseph's words. One of the sons, named Newell, would often come to visit the family and be there for dinners or be at home when Joseph was teaching and sharing stories with them. Newell lived a ways away with his family, with his wife and his kids, and so he would stop by and visit or help his dad with things. He would start to listen in to Joseph teaching, and eventually he started to somewhat believe and be included in some of the things that happened in the meetings, such as giving prayers and sharing experiences and discussing with the other members of the family or other people that would come to visit and listen in. And Newell grew to like Joseph Smith and really admire him and appreciate him. Joseph worked there for a while, and then he eventually moved on to other things, work in the church and other things. But later, a few years later, he came back to visit the Knights because they had been very influential in helping the church grow in that area, and many members of their family joined the church. Newell, however, hadn't joined the church. So on this night, Joseph came back to visit, and he had one of the familiar discussions where he would share stories. The people would listen. They could feel the warmth of the camaraderie and the delicious smell of fresh-baked bread as they were preparing to eat dinner. At this time, Joseph invited people to pray in the group, and he invited Newell volunteered to pray, but as Newell began to start praying, he decided he didn't want to pray. He was feeling kind of upset, and he didn't know why. So he decided he needed to go pray alone. Newell left the house, and as the door closed behind him, the other members continued on in the conversation, and Newell went and walked into the woods, and as he began to pray, he started to feel very, very uneasy in his mind and in his body. And he just couldn't shake this feeling. He tried to pray, but it was very difficult for him to pray at this time. Something was going on with him. Eventually, he went back into the house, and his wife, who saw him, was taken aback. And Newell didn't go into the main house with everybody, but he went into a separate place with his wife, where his wife was. And he told her, "Go get Joseph." Joseph quickly came over, following right behind Newell's wife. And when he saw Newell, he knew that something was amiss. He was having facial contortions from one facial expression to the next, very quickly fluttering between them, and his hands and limbs were contorting in different angles in odd ways. And Joseph watched, and word spread quickly around the people that were nearby that Newell was having something go on with him. So soon there were 8 to 9 adults in the room watching this happen to Newell. At one point, Newell even was raised to almost to the ceiling of the room they were in and thrashed about violently. No one was touching him by an unseen hand. Eventually, he went back to the ground and was still writhing and being contorted in difficult shapes, and his face was askew with different facial expressions, and he wasn't really talking. Joseph Smith was able to eventually grab hold of one of his hands. And as soon as Joseph Smith grabbed Newell's hand, Newell requested Joseph, saying that he knew it was the devil in him and asking Joseph to cast him out. Joseph Smith said, "If Newell knew that he could do that, then it shall be done." And then he commanded the devil in the name of Jesus Christ to depart out of Newell. Immediately after Newell heard this, he spoke, and he said that he saw the devil leaving him and vanishing away. And then he took some time, took some breaths, relaxed, regained his body. His face took on a calm expression. There was no more thrashing, no more grunting sounds. It was calm and peaceful and mild. And his limbs went back to their normal shape and form. They weren't contorted anymore. Everyone in the room breathed a collective sigh of relief. They saw Newell change. They saw him relax. And the folks began to walk out, clasping Joseph and Newell on the shoulders, and everything was okay. God's power had healed Newell. Shortly after this, Newell was baptized, and he remained a faithful member of the church throughout his whole life, even after his wife passed away and he married another widow. And then he ended up taking his family to Missouri with the Saints. He eventually would die at age 47 from a sickness, malaria, and his wife, Lydia, would go on, his second wife, Lydia, would go on to take their family to Salt Lake. His family was blessed and prospered the whole way because of his first wife's service in the church, his second wife, Lydia's service in the church, and Newell's service and faithfulness in the church. Because he was healed, he remained faithful for the rest of his life. All right, that's going to do it for today's story, guys. Thanks for listening. And remember to randomly send the like button a bouquet of flowers for no other reason than to show them your appreciation. And remember to subscribe. And if you got something out of the story, please comment. And if you would like to have a story featured of a modern miracle or a tender mercy that you have been a part of or have heard of, please comment below in the form. Fill out the form, and we'd be happy to feature it on our channel. All right, we'll see you next time. Thank you.